But thank you very much for joining us today during this session about the third unit on our postgraduate certificate in clinical bioinformatics at the University of Manchester. My name's Jessica and I'm the course advisor here for this programme. If you need anything in terms of your application, in learning more about the course, or you have any specific questions, do pass them on to me. I'll pop my email in the chat box in a few seconds and we can discuss those further or arrange a meeting if that would be suitable for you. So today I'm just going to introduce a few people who are joining us on this panel. So it'll be in the style of a panel discussion. We haven't got a presentation. We just want it to be a natural sort of conversation that you can be a part of. So feel free to get involved by popping questions in the chat box or asking questions in the Q&A box as well, and we'll direct them to our panelists. So first of all, I'd like to introduce you to the unit lead on this course. Pete, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name's Peter Colley-Freeman. I'm a lecturer in healthcare sciences, specialising in genomics bioinformatics. As Jess just said, I'm the lead on this unit. I also teach on NHS scientific training programs to teach this kind of stuff to NHS scientists. I am also ex-laboratory and now a programmer, and I develop software that is used in the clinical genomics sphere, which is now used in the teaching.
Great, thanks, Pete. And obviously this topic comes from you. This stems the question about what it means to be an expert in programming. So I guess at the end we can think about whether our panel are experts in programming. Fran, would you like to tell us a bit about yourself? Are you an expert in programming?
No, I'm not an expert in programming, but my background is technology enhanced learning. I'm a lecturer in that field within health sciences. I'm also deputy programme director of the PGCert, so support the other units as well. But yeah, I'm keen to hear what develop, what we can talk about in terms of the programming unit and where we can take it. So it's great to have Iris on the call.
Great, thank you. And Iris, would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, certainly. Hi everyone, I'm Iris Halfpenny. I've just completed Unit 3 of the course. I currently work within the pharmaceutical sector, so my background is as a wet laboratory scientist, mainly in molecular biology and genetics. I currently work within the remit of biomarker discovery, and I would be using a range of NGS applications. So for me, the course was essentially to get a better understanding of kind of the data management and clinical bioinformatics applications that are undertaken in my company, and to facilitate better interaction with those departments on the projects I'd be working in.
Great, thank you. So it's a really interesting background as well. And perhaps we can kick off therefore and talk about, we'll come on to how you have found Iris, but perhaps what candidates can expect from this unit. So obviously people with Iris's background might come to study this unit. And Pete, maybe you can tell us what students can expect from the unit and why they should come and study this with us.
Yeah, I'm going to segue in as well, answering that question on whether or not you've got enough experience. 5 years ago, 6 years ago now maybe, I'd never even touched programming in my life. I'm completely self-taught. Am I an expert in programming? No, I still learn things every day. In fact, I enjoy doing this unit because I learn so much from delivering it. This is stuff that I learn and put into my own practice, my own programming. So I get taught by you guys and the students on it, Iris and co, as much as I teach. So it's a really nice environment to learn. And that's the whole point. This isn't kind of a traditional teaching module that might be expecting. We're not just going to say, we're going to teach you the very basics of Python and teach you how to just code simple things and send you off, because there's a massive leap from learning the basics of Python to actually being able to write something meaningful that you can use in your everyday practice. So what we're going to do is give you the time and the guidance to learn the basics and fundamentals of Python programming in your own time. This can be done. We give you time on the course, absolutely, but that is something that over time you will develop your own skills, you'll get better at. What we're going to equip you though with is a knowledge of the industry standard tools that you will use when you go out into the real world. We'll teach you how to use these, but the biggest thing is we're going to teach you how to become an effective programmer, where to find help, making sure that you're building collaboration, making sure you're working part of a team. Even on solo projects, these principles still apply. So we're not going to teach you, we can't teach you in 10 weeks how to become a good programmer, but we can teach you how to go off and in your own time, as you develop through your career, become a very effective, very good programmer, because you've got the knowledge that will guide you.
Great, that sounds fab. And Fran, what sort of things are covered during this unit? So specifically in terms of the course content, is there anything you could touch on with surrounding that area?
So we cover, it runs over 10 weeks. We cover agile processes, methodologies in terms of supporting you within your coding projects. And the activities are based very much around sort of three what we call sprints. So the 2 sprints are activities that you'll work on in a team, and we specifically try and mix the levels of abilities and experiences with the programming from the students, so that they are really mixed ability teams, with a view to everybody sort of developing each other in sort of a peer learning approach, with support, with facilitation from ex-students and also from educators. But essentially that you'll then work through those different sprints with a view to then the assessment is a coding project, and also some reflection and sort of looking back on what you've learned from Agile and Python and object-oriented programming. But really, as Pete says, it's very much an introduction to get you started in the field, and it's very much applied within clinical bioinformatics. That's the lens.
I think
Definitely.
I'll add on top of that, Fran, because the other thing that we've started doing now is we've started sourcing facilitators from the NHS, National Health Service. So this really is taught by people who are doing programming in a clinical environment and have got a little more experience from previous years, and they can bring that experience back and teach it to you guys. The whole point is it's not just about learning programming, we're also teaching you how to apply the standards that will be needed in healthcare, because there are some very rigorous standards that need to be applied, but they're not scary. It's just a case of having knowledge about them, and these are the people who are best placed to help you with it because they experience it on a day-to-day basis.
Definitely, and it's a good sort of group of people to start getting to know, to build that network even further as well, and develop those professional relationships within the NHS, if that's something you are perhaps in the future looking to go into. Iris, here I'm quite interested. So we've talked about a brief introduction about what candidates can expect from the unit. I'm quite interested to hear what your expectations were before you started the course, if you had sort of any preconceptions maybe that were putting you off maybe starting the course, specifically Unit 3, and then how you actually found the experience of studying this unit. So obviously you've just finished.
Yeah, certainly. So I come from a background where I have absolutely zero programming experience. I'm a wet laboratory scientist, and all that work was done by other teams in the company I work with, and I had no previous experience whatsoever of that. And to be honest, this one module, I was a bit apprehensive going into the module, but I'm pleased to say that, I was pleasantly surprised. I felt very supported throughout the module. How the module is structured is very good in that it builds on itself gradually, and also you're learning those principles, as Peter says, about being a programmer. It's more than actually just learning how to Python code. You're learning the agile work practices, you're learning how to work effectively within a team, how to communicate effectively, how to set tasks within the sprints. You have a certain task you have to complete, and then you have to break that down into manageable chunks, learn how to delegate based on the skill sets. So all those things, feed into how you'd be working on a day-to-day basis as a programmer that I see in the company I work within. So as well as learning basics of Pythons, I also was reinforcing those skill sets that would allow me to be an effective programmer in a work environment. And also from working as part of a team, what I found was that we all gelled really well and we worked together, and where there was gaps in my knowledge, I was able to learn not only from the course materials and the lectures and the facilitators, but also from the guys who were part of my team who maybe were stronger and had previous experience of programming. And likewise, there was guys in my team who had no biology background. They had maybe just the IT, and I was able to plug those gaps for those. So we gelled really well, and we formed a product that was really usable at the end. So in the real life environment, you would have those different skill sets. I suppose for me, I was coming into the module, I was a bit blinded by just the Python programming, but by the end of it, I have a better understanding of what actually it takes to be a programmer, and not necessarily just the languages that you'll use to program.
Definitely. I mean, that answers my question above and beyond. So obviously beforehand you thought it was a lot of sort of Python related stuff, but all those other skills you've learned throughout the course as well. You've touched on so many different areas there, but what perhaps was your favorite part of the unit? Was there a part which you enjoyed the most?
I really enjoyed the sprints. I enjoyed the engagement with the other guys on the team and bouncing off each other and working with our lecturers, because obviously we have a product owner who was defining their requirements, and we were off then trying to develop a product to meet those requirements. I enjoyed that continuous learning and feedback loop that we had throughout the course, which was really good, and it kind of firmed up that we were going on the right direction, or maybe if we were going slightly off target, it kind of reined us back in again, and we learned from those processes.
Amazing.
Yeah, can I just add on top of that, that we did invite Rob along, and it's a shame he couldn't make it, because Iris and Rob worked incredibly well together, and Rob came in at this from the other aspect. He's more of an IT background, so he's got much better understanding, or had a much better understanding of data and why data is important, and he also had an understanding of some programming techniques, and so that's what he brought. So it was this is why we put you in the teams. You get that combination of the skills that, such as Iris has got, that understands the biology, and she can understand the technical sides of the biology and bring that, whereas Rob understood more about the programming technicalities and brought that forward as well. So it's a really nice blend. We try to make sure that the teams are split this way so everyone's supported. And I just say that we understand that programming is a difficult thing to learn. It is a skill. It is a language, effectively. You are learning a new language. We don't shy away from it being difficult. We don't necessarily want to make it easy, but what we do want to do is put you in an environment where you can crack it and you can work as a team to figure it out. So there's no getting around the fact this is a skill. It's not easy. It takes time, but we're putting you in a team that help get you through the basics and teach you how to go forward. And that's the whole idea around the team projects. And as Iris said, we set problems, and as a team you come up with solutions.
Great. And I think that's really sort of a testament to the course, that you've got two people with such different backgrounds really contributing to the same problem. And Iris, you said it really nicely yourself about you filling in those sort of gaps which other members of your team had. So thank you very much for sharing your experience on that. You have sort of gone ahead with some of my questions I was going to ask. Another interesting thing, I'm going to open the floor here to whoever wants to jump on this one. Obviously, this is an online course, so we do use the Slack platform to communicate between the cohort. How important is it for people to get involved in these discussions? I'm not sure, Fran, perhaps you'd like to touch on that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, essentially, it's how we design the course. You know, we're teaching not just Unit 3, but the other units as well, as part of the PGCert, to people who are trying to work, you know, deal with families, you know, and study as well. So that, you know, as distance learners, we wanted to make sure that they were fully supported, and so we baked into the design social learning, social constructivist learning. So essentially, you know, you get we've built in sort of discussion as an element of the assessment, but we've also for Unit 3 specifically, each week we want you to converse, discuss via Slack as a team, and also across the whole cohort, in order to sort of gain insight from each other, and to develop ideas, and to look at the problems and look at problem solving from, as we keep saying, from an applied way, how you would do it in practice. You'd have a group of people looking at particular problems. So we really wanted that social learning to be a backbone to the course, and we use Slack on Unit 3. This is the second time we've run Unit 3 programming, sorry. And each time everybody said that how much they've enjoyed having that Slack channel or that Slack space in order to share ideas and to work together. But it's also nice in that it isn't a formal discussion space where you can be a bit put off, where you kind of on a virtual learning environment and it's kind of blank, whereas with Slack we fill it up with sort of resources that you can use, different channels that you can have, and it feels more natural. And we found from the feedback from the students this time round and also last year, they really benefited from having Slack.
Great, that was a great explanation, Fran. Iris, how did you find using Slack? Did you get on board with it?
Yeah, I would just kind of echo what Fran has said. I found it allowed for really fluid communication between the teams. I suppose as it is a bit more informal, you don't mind putting those silly questions up there as well, if you've got something, whereas if you put it in a formal in email or maybe in the Blackboard discussions, you find it's a bit more off-putting, whereas with the Slack, it's more like a chat function. So it's quite good that way. So I actually really enjoyed using the Slack.
Great, and Pete, as you mentioned, that's where some of those great functional NHS facilitators are able to come in and contribute to people's questions when they might have them. If perhaps you or some of the academic team are busy, they can step in and act as tutors, help guide those projects as well.
Yeah, I think that with Slack, it's all about engagement. We find that people that struggle to get through the content are the ones that don't chat on Slack. Effectively, it's social media based teaching, and there's people available all the time, because if we're not available, your team's often available. The facilitators dropping in and out, so it's very rare you have to wait a long time to get a response.
So while we've been talking, I did launch a poll to our audience to sort of determine how much programming experience our attendees have. So a sort of general question which I'm asked quite a bit is about, I've never done anything like this before. It's quite intimidating to come into this course, and I've got no experience. I don't know how I'm going to cope. So yeah, sort of 67% of our attendees have said that they have no programming experience at all. Pete, is this going to be a problem?
No, I'd say that's quite usual. This is the kind of audience that I would expect, where most will have no knowledge at all, some will have intermediate knowledge, and you get the occasional person with some good knowledge of program or a little bit of experience. This is fine. That's absolutely ideal to build a team from. As we've touched on before, we try to blend the experiences, so different backgrounds bring different aspects, and if we can, we'll try and get information on you before the course starts so we can build the teams up, and that is pretty much what I would have expected from the poll.
Mm-hmm.
Great, definitely. And how could people prepare for this course in advance? Are there some resources people could take beforehand?
Yeah, I mean, I'll let Fran comment on this as well, but I think one of the things I found as being a programmer is it's really about doing a little bit frequently. It's again, I'll take it back to learning a language. It is learning a language. I personally want to learn Italian, and I have to crack on with it, but I'm not doing anything about it at the moment. I cannot expect to go to Italy this summer and speak Italian. So what you can be doing in advance of this is there's lots of online material that are basic introductions to the Python programming language. We recommend one. We can provide you with that information, and a lot of people are quite happy to sit there and do a crossword, or happy to sit there and watch Game of Thrones or something like that, and take an hour doing that. Well, actually, if you can take an hour, or every so often an hour every few days, to just learn a few of the basics of Python, you'll be very well equipped for this course when you finally arrive. But there's no need to do that, but it's like everything, the more you practice it, the better you'll get.
And just to add to that, I mean, like I mentioned before around some of the assessed discussion about how you share resources, we've now got an absolute huge number of resources from this cohort and also from the one last year. And we basically house that in terms of we share that using a particular tool, and we kind of recommend certain things. So we can share that, we call it a wakelet. I don't know if anybody heard of it before, but essentially it's a bookmarking tool, and you can add in kind of your thoughts around that particular resource as well. So we can share that, but we are looking at ways to give you additional you know, sort of extra reading beforehand and sending that out well in advance so that you are equipped to kind of hit the ground running, essentially. But like Pete says, you know, if you don't have that time and that availability, we have kind of built into the 10 weeks of the course, there is additional time. So we do we suggest certain resources either before, but then you can also pick up on some of these resources or some of the notebooks that we've created in the middle of that 10 week, because there is a gap sort of during Christmas if you needed it. So we have tried to build that in, that kind of contingency time to support different levels.
Yeah, and I mean, a lot of, and we've touched on the unit development. A lot of the unit development that we undertake is basically in response to student feedback. And one of the things the students requested this time round, and unfortunately it won't help Iris, so she's a bit too late, but the students from her cohort have said that they would like the material, the introductory material sent out earlier. So that is something we're looking into for your run, or the next run, is to make sure that material is provided earlier, make sure we get the teams set up earlier so you've got more time with hopefully a little bit of user it's more difficult for us to facilitate that if it's open longer, but we'll try and provide a level of expert facilitation. But when you've got a team that's made of people who've got some program experience with none, as Iris said, you can generally muddle through it together. So we'll give you more time hopefully to get through the basics.
It's great that you're taking into consideration the feedback of sort of current students as well. And I imagine you sort of look for industry insight as well to really factor into that course content as the course progresses. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, user feedback has been at the heart of everything I've done in terms of my own work for the last 6 years or so. The idea behind the project I worked on was stepping out of the laboratory. Like Iris, I wanted to understand the bioinformatics pipelines better. I was working primarily in an informatics group. I was slightly odd. I was one of 2 wet lab scientists surrounded by informaticians, and I wanted to learn what I was doing in terms of communicating with them. It so happened I decided that I wanted a project. I got given a small project that was supposed to run for 3 months. I've now got a career from that, which is fantastic. It's I mean, it's hard to describe quite how this thing came to be, but it was just a 3-month project to develop a tool that could be used for accurately describing mutations using the clinical nomenclature, and that's where it all started. But it's user feedback, people saying to me, can you build this? And saying, yeah, we'll have a go, build it. Can you build that? Adapt, evolve, based on what users want. And that is part of what we teach you in this unit. So that's as Fran mentioned, the agile methodologies. This is how that all works. It's what users want and how you meet that brief. And then you get feedback from the user, does it work? And so what we've done is, because, as I said before, we have strong links with the National Health Service Scientist Training Programme. So we've got strong links with the NHS. We've gone out there and spoken to a community of clinicians and developers, and come up with real world scenarios based on things that they wish they had. So the outgoing, there's one of the sprint projects is around something that's going to be outgoing, but it actually addressed a specific clinical need. We are going to replace that with something a bit more modern because that need is now catered for, but we do adapt and evolve the course based on what the clinical users would actually like to see, and we get you to help us build something. And so the other side of it is, though, we also ask you guys, what do you want to build? And we give you the opportunity to build something that you can then take away and use in your own practice. As Iris said, she's built something with her team that she can go ahead and use in the informatics sphere, the genomics bioinformatics sphere. But this year we also had people developing things like and analyzing image files for X-rays and things like that. So we do actually get a very diverse range of projects, but we also get people who aren't sure what they want to do. And what I do every year is I give them maybe a project to work on, which helps me. So I develop a tool called Variant Validator, and this is used actually around the world in clinical bioinformatics now, the tool that I developed. And we give you the opportunity to actually build a tool that might be useful for me that I can then go and adapt, put online, and students from this year's intake have developed things that are going to be going onto a globally used platform. So you're actually contributing towards something that will go back into clinical practice, into clinical use. So we're taking a slightly unique approach to teaching here, in that the research leads the teaching, but we're also taking that back to practice. So the teaching, the stuff you develop, will also lead the research, and you're providing resources that will help people going forward. The other side of this is we said that everything we do, we like to hear what the students want, and we like to take feedback and evolve the course. Now, Iris and Rob are both part of a group that's going to meet for the first time tomorrow to evolve the training material. So we're going to actually not just develop training material for the next run. Students are going to be involved in this process. So we're going to be developing the training material that you guys actually have requested, and we're going to evolve the course to meet your needs as well as the clinical needs.
Amazing. That's really great. So perhaps we could move on a bit to talk about clinical practice now. So I'm not sure if you want to sort of start off and talk a bit about how clinical practice is drawn upon within the teaching. Is this something that you sort of try to sort of tailor your course towards?
I mean, I think in terms of clinical, I think we covered most of that in the previous section, that we do actually try to link this directly with clinical practice, not just in genomics. Iris, might be worth you comment on that, how you've taken what you've learned back into your clinical practice.
I suppose the field within I work within is essentially for developing assays, and then obviously the software that goes along with that assay to be utilised within a clinical trial. Then that can obviously go forward for the development of a new drug or treatment. So a lot of the skills that I have developed within the course are directly applicable to the work that we do within the pharmaceutical sector, as well as, I suppose, as the clinical laboratories that Pete and Fran have referred to, who are doing the diagnostic testing. So I suppose I find this course very beneficial. All the modules I've taken to date have been directly relevant to all the different departments and work that goes on within the sector that I work within. Unit 1, obviously clinical interpretation, is very much to do with the work we do right through from biomarker discovery, assay development to clinical trial delivery. Unit 2, in terms of the health informatics, very much to do with the data management and the development of software tools that we develop for those purposes. And again, Unit 3, the programming, development of the scripts and tools the right way through that drug development pipeline as well for the support and services. And then the final one obviously is the NGS module that we've started, and that obviously that's a key technology that's routine use throughout laboratories worldwide across all the different sectors. So the course is very applicable, all modules, for the work that I do within the pharmaceutical sector, as well within the prospective clinical trial delivery and diagnostic testing realm.
I'm just going to comment on behalf of Rob as well, because I had a conversation with him a week or so ago about how he's using the course, and it's really nice to see that Rob's going forward and using it as a stepping stone into looking towards a career as a healthcare scientist in genomics bioinformatics. So that's a great thing to say. But another thing that actually came up in that conversation is Rob has also got an interest in genetics counselling. And it hadn't occurred to me previously, but actually as a genetics counselor, so more of these patient-facing healthcare roles, GPs, neurologists. We had a neurologist last year who found this course very beneficial. Genetics counsellors, the patient-facing roles are needing to understand clinical bioinformatics data, clinical genetics data increasingly more and more. So this course is actually really beneficial to people working in those patient-facing roles. It's not necessarily about manipulating the data, but it's understanding where the data comes from and being able to interpret the data and understand how it impacts your patient. So I'd say even if you're in that kind of role, it's a really good course to go on. Yeah,
I know we have had some interest this year from some genetic counsellors as well who are looking to develop those skills to feed back to their patients. It's really great to hear.
Well, what I would say on that is that if you are an NHS trainee now, healthcare scientist trainee, which covers the genetics counsellors, you are required to take some of the introductory parts, so not necessarily the programming, but some of the introductory units like Unit 1 of this PGCert. We do teach that to NHS scientist trainees now. Understanding genetics data has become very, very necessary in this field.
Great. And obviously, just to make that clear, the NHS scientist training programme is only available for students in the UK. That's correct, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Well, you certainly have to be. I think you can come from external, but you've got to be in the UK to be able to do it. It's a UK-based course, yeah.
Great. So we've got a bit sidetracked there from what I was going to say. We've started talking about something else. But what I was going to draw back to there was talking a bit, Pete. Obviously, you're sort of quite a key player in the programming game within the clinical world. So perhaps you'd like to talk a little bit about variant validators specifically and the work, how that feeds into the course in delivering this sort of research-led teaching and teaching-led research. Is that something you'd like to move on to next? I know you're very passionate about talking about this.
Yeah, I mean, it's basically what the whole point of this unit was to develop something, a unit that was made around every single mistake in the book that I made while I was learning. This unit is built around a lot of my own personal failures as a programmer, because it's very difficult to self-teach. So we really wanted to bring that in. And Variant Validator is the one thing that I developed. I was very, very fortunate in that it became a resource that it was a 3-month project. 6 years later, I'm still working on it, and as a tool, it is becoming widely recognized as one of the best tools of its kind in the field. It's gaining a lot of impact globally, so it is actually now very widely used, and I do get a lot of requests from clinical users around the world saying we would like this feature, we would like that feature, we would like that feature. So what I do is I don't have the time, literally don't have the time to do all this stuff. So what I'll do is some of it that might be achievable in a short period of time, I'll bring that actual request from actual users and put it into the unit and say, give the students an opportunity to troubleshoot it, solve the issues, figure out what data is required, and generate a product that can be put back and sent out to the users. So the research really does inspire the teaching. We bring in real world scenarios into the teaching. And then that's basically the back to practice. The teaching's inspiring my research. You guys, the students have come up with solutions for this that I hadn't thought of. And it's really nice to get the students' perspective on this, because I found that the more brains that you put on a question, the better, because you come up with different solutions, different alternatives, maybe even add something that someone wants in your group that you hadn't thought of, and you can produce a better product. And then it gets sent back out to the clinical community. They get the chance to accept it or change it. So it's a continuous feedback of the research. And the way we use this unit is the research gives us the educational questions, the educational answers go back straight into the research questions, and we have a development loop there, an agile development loop.
And just to add on to that, what we mentioned before about the social learning side of things, and the group work. What we're really trying to do here is, and I think you touched on it there, Pete, is the word community. So a community of practice, essentially. Clinical bioinformatics is relatively a new profession, so you've got people coming from different backgrounds. So the more that we can build up that community through the course, using real world problems, using the real world methods methods and tools that you know we've incorporated, then making that connection between research and teaching and building that community of practice, it can only, you know, that is a real USP for this course, and you know, something that I think from the feedback we've had is something that's really valued from the students.
Yeah, I'd say it is a very unique thing that we bring, and myself and Fran have been delighted with feedback from students and the university. There's been a lot of acknowledgement. In fact, Fran's actually writing some teaching literature around this, which is receiving good feedback as well. So hopefully something will be published very soon as well. We're very delighted with the outcomes of this unit. It's a fledgling unit. It's going to be going into its 3rd year. So we're very happy with the outcomes.
Great. Iris, is there anything that you're able to touch on specifically here about your research project, which you got involved with during the course? How did you find the sort of whole process of the research project?
I suppose the tool that we decided that we wanted to develop would be a tool that would be useful, that I could take back into my own laboratory. So not only did I want to learn the skills that would help me in this module, I also want to take something useful back that I could use within my own laboratory. And I'm pleased to say that we actually did get something. Now there's further work that we would like to do to the tool, and we can see kind of where we'd like to take it further. So, you know, I think in terms of the skill set to enable me to do that there, and also I've made very good connections with other guys within the team that I've been able to work with as well, that would allow us to further develop that tool. So I suppose I got something useful that I could use, but at the same time I developed my skills alongside that there. So I think it was productive.
That's great to hear, and especially building that network on a global scale is really exciting. Some of our sort of candidates that I've been speaking with on sort of a personal level, I've had a real variety of conversations with some people who, like yourself, Iris, who've got a specific idea of what they want to achieve from this unit. They know exactly that they want to come in and develop those skills to support their company further, whereas others who perhaps aren't working in a clinical setting at the moment will require that support from Pete to sort of provide them with a project that they can support Pete with in the flip side. So it's great to have that variety of to have that mix of people. I know, for example, some people who don't work in a lab don't have access to that software that they can contribute to. So Pete's approach is really quite unique, I'd say. But I think coming to the end of there, Pete, is there anything else you'd like to mention about that while we're on that topic? And Fran?
No, I think we've covered. I mean, I want to echo what Fran said around the community of practice. I mean, the other aspect of that is that in clinical practice, it's becoming increasingly important to make sure that everyone's kind of like speaking the same language when it comes to clinical data. And this has been something that's been missing in the field. This unit gives us the opportunity to teach you all to effectively speak the same clinical language when it comes to data. And we're hoping that if the community starts adopting these these practices. So what we want you to do is learn best practice and take it back into your workplace and teach your colleagues how to apply the best practice. We can actually make a difference improving diagnostics and clinical research around the world. It would be great if we can. We're already contributing to the UK. It's going global as well, and we really want to see this make a difference in the field, not just your own personal journeys, but also globally. We'd like to see improvements, and hopefully this course is part of that.
Great, that's wonderful to hear, and it sounds such great work that you're doing. But I think, yeah, we've covered a lot of sort of the questions which we wanted to cover today during this session. One thing I would like to draw upon just to finish off the session is really taking advantage of having Iris here to talk to us. At this point during the session, if anybody has any questions they'd like to ask Iris in particular, she is here and available to talk to you directly, so do take advantage of that opportunity. But Iris, would there be any top tips that you would provide to any prospective students for this course, maybe perhaps juggling a sort of full-time job alongside a part-time course, or perhaps studying online, or anything that you wish you'd known before you'd started the course?
I think, in all honesty, the course is set up really well. So it is. There's lots of support there. I think for me, it was more being structured about my approach, and kind of having routine. So setting aside the time to complete the work that was outlined in the different sections. In terms of success in the course, I think you have to engage. So the teams are set up, and I think if you work within isolation, it will be more of a challenge. But if you do engage and you work as part of a team, and you know, you use the resources that are provided in terms of Slack, for example, and don't be afraid to put up those silly questions. You know, I think sometimes that's the first hurdle, is just saying, I don't know this here. Does anyone know, the answer to this here? Or help me find out an answer to this here, because you don't want to appear silly. But I think if you go with an open mind and you engage with your team and with your lecturers and facilitators, I think it will be successful.
Definitely. I think that's a great answer as well. And how did you find the sort of workload throughout the course? Because obviously, well, drawing onto all 4 units, it's a large sort of work time. It is a part-time course, but we do expect sort of 15 to 20 hours a week. Was that realistic?
I work full time, so I do. I'm also a mother, so I have children at home as well. I found it, for me, it was realistic. If you stick to the work on a weekly basis, as I said, builds. So it's well structured out and it's achievable within the weeks. And there is downtime that has been assigned, for example, holidays between modules and certain stages, that allows you to, I suppose, to kind of take a break from the work. So I think, if you work at it and you stay within the weekly kind of schedule, it'll be fine. It was fine for me.
That's fab, especially sort of juggling this with personal and professional commitments. We definitely congratulate you on getting this far, so well done to you. So that's, sorry, Fran, were you going to say
So I was just going to note, yeah, well done, Iris. It's difficult to study and juggle everything else at the same time. I know I've done it as well. I've done that. But just to note that there's a part-time version as well of the PGCert. You can spread the units over 2 years rather than fit them into the 1 year. So we try and be as flexible as possible, really. So just to let you know that as well.
And one final question, Iris, that I'd like to draw upon. So you've obviously taken part in this fantastic course, as we've heard today. How has this opened any doors for you within your career? Can you see yourself progressing, or was it just more that you wanted to develop upon the work that you're doing at the moment?
I think for me, it was more just to develop upon the work that I'm doing at present. I think undertaking this course has enabled me to have a better understanding of the processes that are employed within clinical bioinformatics and script software development, that allows for better engagement between myself and the teams that I work with within the sector that I work. So I think we'll have a more productive relationship, and it ultimately would benefit me within my professional career.
Great, that's wonderful to hear. We know there's many different reasons why people might apply for this course, perhaps for exactly the reasons you've just talked about yourself, to move across into healthcare, to take advantage of the scientist training program, or even I don't know, for example, to gain that management position, to take their career to that new level that they're not quite achieved without this extra knowledge. So thank you very much for letting us know sort of your experience today. But I think we'll leave it there in a few moments' time. Pete and Fran, is there anything else you'd like to say before we finish off? Oh, I think you're on mute.
I'm just quickly answering a question in the chat, so I'll let Fran go there.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think we've kind of covered everything in the conversations, really, haven't we? But I think just sort of a message to sort of leave everybody with is we really are really conscious of trying to build on student feedback and incorporate student feedback in everything that we do. And as we mentioned, we've got co-creation sessions being set up over the next few weeks, where we'll start to redevelop some of the materials. But I think it's that link the link that we're trying to make is to practice, and that is keeping the course up to date and relevant. And we listen to we gather your requirements as part of the course itself from practice. So as Pete's already mentioned, it is really, really key to us to develop the course in that way.
Great, thanks. We've also had a question come through on the chat just before we leave. We had it earlier on in the session, but I just wanted to perhaps, Fran and Pete, you'd be able to draw upon this, and perhaps even Iris, this is something you could offer a solution to as well. One of our attendees finds some of the resources that they find online quite overwhelming. Some of the content can seem quite intimidating before having taken especially units 1 and 2 to have that smooth sort of learning process. Are there any sort of introductory resources you would specifically recommend that might be a little less overwhelming?
So yeah, we have got a selection of resources that we can share. That, as I mentioned earlier on in the call, we've kind of collected these over the last 2 runs. So we can share those either via this or via after the event.
So if I pass them around with the recording, perhaps I could include some information about other resources when I send the recording round over the next couple of days. That sounds suitable. Great.
Yeah, and just say that just banging just a bit of shameless advertising as well. If you're wanting information around variant data, so descriptions of mutations or interpretation, that kind of thing, you can contact the admin at Variant Validator. We do actually provide quite a bit of guidance for people who are stuck with their variant data. So this is another resource you can tap in, and we've got some experts on there, myself and a colleague at the University of Leicester, and we are well connected with the community. So if we don't know the answers, we are quite happy to find out. So again, one of the things, if you're unsure, if you're looking at a tool, you're not quite sure how to use it, you can actually go and ask. You should be able to go and ask the people who maintain it, or like I say, as another tool you know that provides some of the data or has information about this data, contact the people who run the tool. It's always a good place to start.
So thank you very much for joining, and have a lovely evening.